the smile that hid a monster. The sound of a ceramic mug shattering against the hardwood floor is something I'll never forget. Some people remember the day their lives changed because of a phone call. Others remember a knock at the door. For me, it was the sound of coffee spilling across polished oak and the terrifying silence that followed. By the time I reached the living room, my wife, Helen, was lying motionless on the floor. A thin stream of blood ran from the side of her head, slowly spreading across the rug she had proudly picked out almost 20 years earlier. Standing only a few feet away was the man responsible, Arnold Benson. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't trying to help. He wasn't even pretending to care. Instead, he looked down at Helen with the coldest smile I'd ever seen. Then he looked directly into my eyes. She lost her balance, he said calmly. If anyone asks, that's what happened. Before I could answer, he stepped over the broken coffee mug, straightened his expensive jacket, and walked out of my house as if he had just finished discussing the weather. The front door closed. His truck disappeared down the street. Only then did I drop to my knees beside Helen. Helen, sweetheart, stay with me. My hands trembled as I pressed a kitchen towel against the wound on her head. Blood soaked through the fabric almost immediately. I dialed emergency services with fingers that barely obeyed me. The dispatcher kept talking. Sir, can you hear me? Is she breathing? Basher? Yes. Barely. Keep pressure on the wound. Those few minutes felt longer than the previous 64 years of my life. The ambulance arrived quickly. Paramedics rushed inside. One checked Helen's pulse while another prepared oxygen. They loaded her onto a stretcher and hurried toward the ambulance. I climbed into my pickup and followed behind, praying to God that I wouldn't lose the woman who had spent 41 years standing beside me, through every joy and every hardship life had thrown at us. As I drove toward Memorial Hospital, one question echoed inside my mind. How had it come to this? The answer wasn't simple. It had started years earlier, long before blood stained my living room floor. Long before Arnold's smile became something I feared. It started the day my daughter introduced us to the man she insisted was the love of her life. Uppercut, Arnold arrived wearing a tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than my first truck. He walked with the confidence of someone who believed every room belonged to him. His handshake was firm, too firm, the kind of handshake meant to establish dominance instead of friendship. I'm Arnold Benson, he said proudly. I own one of the fastest growing construction companies in Texas. For the next 2 hours, Arnold talked almost exclusively about himself. His business, his income, his investments, his expensive vacations, his luxury pickup. Every conversation somehow returned to one subject: Arnold. Whenever someone else tried speaking, he redirected the attention back to himself. At first, I assumed he was simply nervous. Helen wasn't convinced. That night, after Clementine and Arnold left, she quietly washed dishes while I dried them. Without looking at me, she whispered, "Did you notice how he never once asked about us?" I shrugged. Maybe he's just ambitious. She shook her head. No. There's something missing behind his smile. I laughed gently. I think you're worrying too much. Looking back now, I wish I had listened. The wedding took place 11 months later. It was beautiful. Our daughter looked happier than I'd ever seen her. Arnold stood proudly beside her, smiling for every photograph. Everyone congratulated them. Everyone believed they had a bright future ahead. Everyone, except Helen. During the reception, she squeezed my hand. I hope I'm wrong. So do I replied. Neither of us realized that those would become some of the saddest words we'd ever speak. The changes happened slowly, almost invisibly. At first, family dinners became less frequent, then birthdays, then holidays. Whenever we invited Clementine over, Arnold always seemed to have another plan: a business meeting, a weekend trip, an important client. Eventually, our daughter stopped calling every week, then every month. When she did answer the phone, her voice sounded different, quieter, more careful, as though someone was listening nearby. Helen noticed immediately. She's changing. I tried convincing myself it was simply marriage. People get busy, life changes, families grow. But deep inside, I knew Helen was right. One Sunday afternoon, Helen baked Clementine's favorite chocolate cookies. She packed them into a small tin and asked if we could surprise them. When we arrived, Clementine hugged us tightly. Arnold barely looked up from his phone. Helen smiled warmly. I made your favorite. Took one look, closed it. We're trying to eat healthier. His tone wasn't rude. It was worse. It was dismissive. Helen apologized immediately. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You never ask, Arnold replied. The room fell silent. On the drive home, Helen stared out the window. I was only trying to do something nice. I reached across the seat and held her hand. I know. But somehow, that wasn't enough. Every visit became another opportunity for Arnold to criticize someone. Helen folded laundry incorrectly. She bought the wrong groceries. She arrived too early. She stayed too late. Nothing she did was ever acceptable. And somehow, she always apologized. One evening, I finally asked why. Helen, why do you keep saying sorry? She smiled sadly. Because if I don't, he'll take it out on Clementine. That answer broke something inside me. Arnold crosses a line that changes everything forever when a family gathering turns into a nightmare. And Merle quietly begins preparing a plan that will eventually destroy the empire Arnold spent years building. For a while, I convinced myself that Arnold's behavior was nothing more than arrogance. Plenty of successful people developed oversized egos. It didn't necessarily make them dangerous. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first real warning came on a rainy Thursday evening. Helen had invited Clementine and Arnold over for dinner. She spent the entire afternoon preparing their favorite meals: roast chicken, homemade mashed potatoes, fresh bread, and the peach cobbler our daughter had loved since childhood. By the time they arrived, the table looked like something from a holiday celebration. Helen smiled proudly. I hope you're hungry. Clementine smiled back. It smells amazing, Mom. Arnold barely glanced at the table. As soon as he sat down, he frowned. You still use this old china? Helen looked confused. Yes, we've had it for years. He picked up a plate and examined it like a judge inspecting evidence. My grandmother had dishes like these. They belonged in a museum. He laughed. No one else did. Helen quietly reached for the serving spoon, pretending not to hear him. Throughout dinner, Arnold criticized everything. The chicken was too dry. The potatoes had too much butter. The bread wasn't warm enough. Even the coffee was cheap. Helen apologized after every complaint. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. Those words became so common that they sounded automatic. When dessert was served, Clementine accidentally spilled a little juice on the tablecloth. Before Helen could grab a towel, Arnold slammed his hand against the table. The loud bang startled everyone. What is wrong with you? He snapped at Clementine. Can you do anything without making a mess? The room froze. Clementine's smile disappeared instantly. She lowered her head like a frightened child. It's okay, Helen said softly, reaching for the napkins. I'll clean it. Arnold pointed toward Helen. This is exactly why she never learns. You fix every mistake she makes. I slowly placed my fork on the table. That's enough. Arnold looked at me for the first time that evening. Excuse me? You heard me. This is our home. You don't raise your voice at my daughter. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Arnold smiled, not because he was amused, because he enjoyed confrontation. He leaned back in his chair. I think we're leaving. Without another word, he stood. Clementine immediately followed him. Before walking out, she whispered to Helen, I'm sorry. Helen hugged her tightly. You never have to apologize to me. The front door closed. Silence filled the house. Helen slowly gathered the untouched dessert plates. I noticed her hands shaking. I ruined dinner, she whispered. I walked over and gently held her shoulders. No. You didn't ruin anything. He did. She looked at me with watery eyes. I just want our family back. That sentence stayed with me for weeks. Over the next several months, Arnold became even more controlling. He decided where Clementine could go, who she could talk to, how often she could visit us. Even simple phone calls became difficult. Whenever Helen called, Arnold usually answered, Clementine's busy. We'll call later. Later almost never came. One afternoon, Helen sat on our porch holding her phone. She'd called 3 times. No answer. She sighed. I miss my little girl. I wrapped my arm around her. So do I. Neither of us knew that Clementine wanted to call. Arnold simply wouldn't allow it. A few weeks later, we attended Maya's 7th birthday party. It should have been one of the happiest days of the year. Instead, it became another painful reminder of what our family had become. Helen spent hours wrapping gifts. She even knitted Maya a small pink sweater by hand. When Maya opened it, her face lit up. "I love it." She ran over and hugged Helen. Then Arnold walked over. He picked the gift bag. "We already bought her designer clothes." He forced a smile. Helen's face fell. "Oh, I thought," Arnold interrupted. "I'm sure you meant well." Understood the insult hidden beneath them. Even some of the guests looked uncomfortable. I clenched my jaw. Helen simply smiled. "If Maya likes it, that's all that matters." Arnold laughed quietly. "No. What matters is giving children quality. You've embarrassed my wife for the last time." The backyard became silent. "You really want to do this?" If I had, I might have said something neither of us could take back. Not today. She looked emotionally. They happened. On the drive home, Helen looked out the passenger window. "I don't think Arnold likes me." I almost laughed. He doesn't like anyone. But deep inside, I was beginning to realize something far more frightening. People like Arnold didn't simply dislike others. They enjoyed making people feel small, especially kind people, especially people who never fought back. And Helen never fought back. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. Helen was already there, sitting alone, staring into the darkness. "I woke you?" I asked. She shook her head. I couldn't sleep. After a long silence, she quietly said something I'll never forget. "Do you think Clementine is happy?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to reassure her. Instead, I couldn't answer. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure. What I didn't know was that only 3 weeks later, I would witness something that erased every remaining doubt in my mind. It happened in our own kitchen, and the bruise Helen tried so desperately to hide became the moment I stopped hoping Arnold would ever change, and started preparing for the day he would finally face the consequences.